Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. It's time now for the week that was. Let's take a look at the top stories that made headlines around the globe this week. And we're starting here in Nigeria, where the Senate has suspended the senator representing Kogi Central in the National Assembly, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, for 6 months for violating the Red Chamber's rules. Her security detail will also be withdrawn and allowances withheld for the period of suspension. Now, this follows a dispute with Senate President Akpabio, who she has accused of sexual harassment. Arise correspondent Omar Bazwaye reports.
The travails of Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan started with "These are outbursts," as she refused to relocate to a new seat a fortnight ago. On Thursday, Senate slams a suspension order on her for misconduct.
That the Senate do suspend Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan for 6 months for a total violation of the Senate Standing Rules 2023, as amended, for bringing the presiding officer and the entire Nigerian Senate in general to a public opprobrium. Those in support of prayer one say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
The hammer fell on Akpoti-Uduaghan after the Senate disciplinary panel indicted her and recommended that she should be suspended for 6 months.
That the Senate do suspend Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan with effect from 6 March 2025 from all legislative activities forthwith.
The Senate adopted the report of its disciplinary committee that had earlier accused Akpoti-Uduaghan of trying to stop it from carrying out its assignment. The upper chamber went further to bar her from coming anywhere near the National Assembly. Her office is to be locked and her salaries and allowances withheld for the period she's to stay away.
For the period of her suspension, she be barred from representing herself to the public, locally and internationally, as a Senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Akpoti-Uduaghan sat on a seat, occasionally smiling as Senate decides her fate. Earlier, the Chief Whip, Mohammed Mongunu, in a point of order, drew attention to Akpoti-Uduaghan's consistent refusal to stand up to observe the entry of the Senate President, an act she repeated on Thursday.
It was in the media. All the media yesterday reported that when the Senate President is entering, she didn't observe that rule. And today also, she didn't observe that rule.
Not satisfied with how a sexual harassment petition against the President of the Senate, Akpabio, was tossed out on Wednesday, Akpoti-Uduaghan resubmitted it on Thursday. But it was an exercise in futility. The Senate disciplinary panel had nailed her, and the petition would now count for nothing. Not one of the senators, including those in our caucus from Kogi State, rose in our defense.
Mr. President, I'm one of those that put you in this problem, and I'm very sorry. When my sister came to the Senate, you were very reluctant, giving her a leadership position. I want to recall your word. You said she's a rookie. And there are people that came before her. Karimi, why would I give her chairmanship position? You said you wouldn't do that. That your conscience will not allow you to do that. I went to some leaders here to put pressure on you.
The closest to sympathy she got was a plea from the minority leader, Senator Abamoro, asking the Senate to reduce the suspension to 3 months.
I say this with all with all sense of responsibility. But I think that with what has been canvassed here and the unanimity of senators on the gravity of these incidents, on the integrity of this institution, that 3 months is sufficient for some level of restitution.
Abamoro's appeal was flatly rejected in the face of fierce opposition by senators, including those from our People's Democratic Party, PDP, calling on the Senate to unleash its powers on her to serve as a deterrent.
The past
2 weeks, the integrity has gone down just because of mere trivial matter of allocating seat and so on. We don't want to know what is undercurrent. God so kind, those people who push you to assist, they have confessed. And I have prayed for him that may God forgive him and Jubril.
Even the plea not to withdraw her security details was equally thrown out. Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan could, however, get a reprieve and return to the Senate much earlier if she apologizes in a written letter to the leadership of the Senate. But as Sergeant-at-Arms closed in on her to effect the suspension order, Akpoti-Uduaghan had this parting word for Akpabio and the rest of the Senate.
This injustice will not be sustained. The pursuit for justice.
Sensing that a microphone had been turned off, she stormed out, closely marked by the Sergeant-at-Arms, who escorted her to a waiting vehicle. Omo Bazwai, Arise News.
Meanwhile, violence erupted outside of National Assembly as protesters gathered in support of Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan and counter-protesters showed up in support of the Senate President. Our colleague here and Arise correspondent Adisowa Giwa-Osage reports.
Protesters gathered outside Nigeria's National Assembly today in support of Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, who petitioned the Senate to investigate Senate President Godswill Akpabio for sexual harassment and abuse of power. Counter-protesters backing Senator Akpabio also rallied, demanding that Senator Akpoti apologize.
United Women for Good Governance call on Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan to apologize to the Nigerian Senate. Yes! Yes! To apologize to the Nigerian Senate and also the occupier of the Senate President office and the person of His Excellency Senator Godswill Akpabio.
She says her husband and leave Akpabio alone. A man is free to look at a woman. That is the end. He should stop blackmailing Akpabio. Akpabio is on. He should stop it.
What began as a peaceful demonstration quickly descended into chaos, with police deploying tear gas to disperse the crowd. Each side blamed the other for inciting violence.
Senator Natasha has a hand in this. Are you accusing her of sponsoring violence? Of course, I'm accusing her for sponsoring violence. What's your proof? Because these people came from Kogi State and they made it clearly that they are here to support Natasha for Senator Akpabio to step down. Over what?
Protest. The police tried to be professional in the beginning, right? Well, along the line, we saw some arranged counter-protesters, right? Until our demands are met, which is first, Senator Akpabio should allow Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan to carry out her constitutional duty without any hindrance.
Amidst the disorder, Akpabio supporters were seen fighting over water and biscuits. While one woman quietly compiled a list of attendees, claiming she was there to protest for peace.
Here for Senator Natasha.
I am for peace. For peace in our nation.
Yes, but who are you here to support today?
As concerns grow over the weaponization of poverty in Nigerian politics, where protesters are allegedly mobilized for a fee.
Why are you here?
Look at what we are doing for you. Look at what we are going to do for you. Don't disappoint us.
The true impact of today's events remains to be seen. Adisowa Giwa-Osage, Arise News, Abuja.
Now, I find it, I would say, interesting that on this day, we're equally celebrating International Women's Day with the theme Accelerate Action, and in the same breath, we are having this conversation, which then makes me wonder, what are we truly celebrating on this day? What are we actually pushing for? And honestly, where do we stand with regards to the theme accelerate action. I don't think, I mean, it's just, the irony is just incredible.
Go on.
I should go first.
No, it's International Women's Day. Women first.
You see, the thing about this is that I think we need to talk about the how the Senate itself has comported itself. Now, not speaking on the veracity of the claims by Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, whether it's true or false that the Senate president sexually harassed her, but we need to look at how the Senate itself has acted against its own Senate Rule Book, Order 67, which says it cannot suspend a senator for more than 2 weeks, against the Court of Appeal ruling in the Senator Ndume case, which says a senator cannot be suspended for this long, against the High Court ruling in the Senator Omo-Agege case in, I believe, 2017, where the judge there said that suspending him violently violates the Constitution, that trying to prevent him from accessing the courts is, in fact, intimidation, and that is not allowed by any organ of the government because the Senate rules, the Constitution has supremacy to the Senate rules. But even the Senate rules itself, this is unprecedented that they will withdraw her security. And the former Senate President Ahmed Lawan stood up and said that this is something we should think about. We need to think about the precedent that this sets, that she's no longer a senator. That even if we're saying we are suspending her for 6 months, she is still a senator. She still has constituents. To pull away her security shows the punitive measures that the Senate is taking in this instance. And we had, and you know, a lot of people have said that why did Senator Natasha not appear before the Senate committee, the ethics committee? But there was an injunction. So it's either she believes that the court was valid to give that injunction and therefore does not appear, or she sets aside the court judgment like the rest of her colleagues did and appear at that hearing. And furthermore, the chair of that ethics committee was on a rise the morning of speaking about the case. If a judge on your matter comes and speaks about whether or not he believes you, the morning before you go to court, he's on the news speaking about the case, I do not believe anyone will have confidence in the process. When the spokesman of the Senate, who also speaks for you, because you're also still a senator, comes on the news channels, whether it's Arise, whether it's channels, and speaks about how he does not believe you, then I do not believe you have confidence in the institution. When the chief whip of the Senate speaks about a woman and speaks about who is fathering her children or not in order to make her claims lack credibility, I do not believe you have confidence in the institution. And the most shameful thing that I think I have ever seen come out of a Senate president's mouth is that the Senate president himself, as a celebration of International Women's Day, went and stood in front of a crowd of women and said, "Have I sexually harassed you? Does that mean you are not attractive?" And there were women in the crowd who actually laughed, without even saying whether or not her claims were true, which we cannot know because they said her petition was dead on arrival, because her petition, even the resubmitted one, they've refused to hear it because they have refused to investigate themselves before they've refused to hold themselves to the standards that they want her to hold herself to, before they've refused to follow the rules that they said that she violated. We cannot even know whether or not she was sexually harassed because the Senate has refused to investigate.
And of course, they've said the case is, according to, like you said, the ethics committee, dead on arrival. I think what's also heartbreaking is the fact that when it comes to cases like this, if I'm going to use the legal terms to explain it, there are a bunch of facts that you could say, you know what, these are the different things that happened. You know, she didn't move her seat, she disrespected the integrity of the Senate, she did this, she did that, she accused Senator Akpabio of sexual harassment, but there's always that one fact and issue that you have to pay attention to. And it's interesting how the entire Senate has intentionally ignored the issue in this entire case, but chosen to address seemingly every other thing in a very crooked manner, without even properly articulating the tenets of the law, without going through with what the court had said. I think she should just go back to the court, because at the end of the day, they ignored that injunction. So she should just go back, because this is, like I said, it baffles me. The fact that we're talking about this
on International Women's Day?
On International Women's Day, and we're supposed to look up to the Senate to say, this is where we're supposed to be heard.
Yeah.
This is the hallowed chambers. This is where they look at Nigeria and they say, this is where it happens. It's It's disappointing. It's
All right,
truly disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, I get you both, and I must concede, given the fact that, this is, this is something that, no, I mean, this is something that will be expectedly, touchy, particularly for women. But for me, there's a Yoruba word, that is apt in describing things like this. Ijalude, Loridowe. You get into this sort of trouble because relationship has gone, sour. That's why, because the Senate President that I know, that I see, and the Mrs. Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan that I see, since the commencement of the 10th Assembly, and even before, and before would be when she got married, and he was there and all those things, I will imagine that it was a charming relationship. And they do mention the fact that they are family, friends and everything. So the first thing that I look at in matters like that is what went wrong. It is possible that what went wrong is outside of the things that we are seeing. It's probably outside of all the drama that we have seen. And I get the point that Senate should learn to conduct itself. But I think that both of them, not just the Senate, but in particular, the Senate President himself, and of course, Mrs. Akpoti-Uduaghan herself. Yes, Mrs. Uduaghan, because sometimes even when you are right, there are ways that you can convey that your conduct will help your case. But when you go all gaga, and it looks like I'm ready to fight, I think that the meat of your case tends to get lost in what you are trying to say.
If you're saying about her going all gaga, because something I have found very interesting as someone who has been following Nigerian politics for a while is that people are acting that this is the worst behavior they have ever seen in the Red Chamber. I've seen videos of our current First Lady, in physical altercations, and she spoke about the sanctity of the space and the institution. It honestly, for me, I think that we need to. This is not the most dramatic outing we've seen. This is not the loudest senator that we've seen on.
I get your point, but again, that was not my point. People, there are, cases will be different, and how you handle them will be different. The case at hand now is the case of Mrs. Akpoti-Uduaghan, and I'm saying that even when you're right, sometimes there are ways that
But Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan
can be.
Way off.
Why are you emphasizing senator? Everybody knows she's a senator.
No, because we say Senate President. I think we should know, but I think the proper title.
Sorry.
Do we say Mr.?
It depends on the House rule. You can say Mr. Tinubu.
But ideally, do we say that?
But we say Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
But we
without necessarily saying
that
President Tinubu. But I don't think that's an issue. It's not in doubt that she's a senator. She's Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan. She's on suspension. But of course, as I said, both parties will need to take a second look at what is happening, because I see two flawed individuals who will need to improve on how they carry themselves. One, the Senate President, and the other one, Senator Mrs. Akpoti-Uduaghan. All right, away from all that chaos, Nigeria on Thursday launched comprehensive standards and guidelines for organ and tissues transplants, aiming to regulate a sector plagued by ethical concerns and exploitation. Despite medical expertise, Nigeria's organ transplant system is still being hampered by donor shortages, cultural issues, and weak laws that fuel ethical concerns and increase the risk of trafficking. The new guidelines seek to establish transparency and adherence to international best practices in Africa's most populous country. They explicitly prohibit organ sales. Minister of State for Health, Isiaq Adekunle Salako, said the new framework encompasses kidney, liver, bone marrow, cornea, gamete, and embryo donation, storage, and surrogacy. I think that's an important development, away from all the noise of, politics, but important development. And I think that it looks like the health ministry, and the general administration of Bola Ahmed Tinubu at this point in matters of health are seen, to me to have good news. You know, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, on TV, in all the media, people were celebrating the fact that there's an 80% reduction in dialysis. Yeah. And now this news, which of course seeks to basically, you know, redefine how organ transplant sales and things like that, because everybody will remember what happened to Senator Ikeja, you know, and all that led to the boy being taken, you know, to London and everything. I think this is a good one. If properly and well implemented.
Absolutely. It's just like what you said earlier about weaponization of poverty. We have a lot of young Nigerian youths, vibrant Nigerian youths, who would say, if you give me this amount of money, I will give you, I'm ready to sell. You know, so I definitely think that while that runs rampant, it is important to have proper guidelines, not forgetting that one of the major issues with regards to insecurity in the transportation system is the fact that a lot of these seemingly one-chance people end up using some of the victims for, you know, organ harvesting and the like. So it's scary to say the least. Well, this lets me know something else, aside from the fact that there will be a regulation for it, but also that there's an attention to the fact that this is also a problem that persists, and there is a security lapse there where people need to be protected, where people's organs need to be protected. And I also think it should extend to the fact that there are people who genuinely would like to donate as well. So as opposed to just making it a thing of, I have a conversation with you and I say, I will pay you 10 million naira to give me one of your lungs. It's something you can actually say, I am an organ donor, be properly registered by the government, let people know. If possible, carry a card. So if you get in an accident tomorrow, it's something that the doctors already know. So it doesn't now look like something that you need to...
It's actually a process. I think this
is
just an improvement.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's just an intentional... I'm just saying, like, this just further shows that they are intentional about that process, and it does exist, so people can be much more aware of it.
Absolutely.
Yes. I think it's, as you said, that we need to give credit where it's due, particularly when it comes to the health ministry. The Minister of State for Health, Dr. Sarko, who presented this, and we also have our Minister, Honorable Minister Ali Pate. We have seen in recent days now, I think treatment for leprosy is coming back, which failed due to the shortages in aid that we were receiving. But I think this is also very important. Basically, you know, just going off of what Kachi said, I think two of you have said it all here. We have an issue when it comes to crime, when it comes to organ harvesting, and we need to make sure that the most vulnerable in society are protected. But also a little bit further, because Nigeria is trying to position itself as a destination for medical tourism. And so having proper policy implementation and guidelines is something that will work in furthering, you know, this goal. But let's move on to our next story. Now, the head office of Ikeja Electricity Distribution Company and the Ikeja business unit of the DISCO were on Thursday morning attacked and vandalized by officers from the Nigerian Air Force Base in Oshodi, Lagos. According to the Ikeja DISCO officials, the Air Force personnel insisted on being reconnected in spite of their reluctance to offset the costs of pending electricity bills, as well as establish cases of electricity theft in the past. The Air Force men were said to have embarked on a rampage, breaking down doors as they searched for the chief executive officer of the company, Folake Shoeton. Reports say when they found her, she was assaulted and forced into the trunk of a car. The crisis began after Ikeja DISCO disconnected power supply to the Air Force base in the wake of the military unit's refusal to allow the installation of electric meters in their premises while bypassing the legal power connections.
Deep sigh. That was a deep sigh.
It's, you know, when we talk about, you know, I used the word show of shame before, but I think I have to now. I've been one-upped in less than 30 minutes. I mean, what can I say to describe this? Our security services, the Air Force, they're supposed to be those who protect and serve the average Nigerian citizen. Comporting themselves in this manner is beyond scary, it is beyond disappointing, and it's actually beyond shameful. For a woman, this is another woman, it's International Women's Day now. We're talking about the CEO of Ikeja Electric, Mrs. Folake Shoeton, to be put in the trunk of the car because the Air Force refuses to be metered, refuses to pay bills owed, and bypasses legal electricity lines, allegedly. These are the allegations. And we're seeing staff being beaten, premises being destroyed.
That was horrific, wasn't it?
Absolutely horrific.
Totally.
I think it still takes us back to everything we've been saying about a system. When you build a system where there is no respect for the rule of law in any sector, it's just it's just the norm. It's going to trickle into other parts of that system. It's going to trickle into your security. It's going to trickle into your finance. It's going to trickle into your health. So as we just spoke about a good thing that happened, we can have one good thing and then there's something else that's faulty. It's still going to collapse on itself. So the truth is we need to just learn. I don't know what it is. Why can't we just do the right thing? This does not add up.
Yeah, I mean, you know, in Africa as a country news, the similar happened in Nairobi last week, where the Nairobi city headquarters were cut off from electricity. But instead of resorting to violence, because I have to say, there's something about resorting to violence in Nigeria. The senator that stood up, the minority leader in the Senate, said that in Nigeria, you beat your child with your right hand, you pull them in with your left. He even compared Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan to a recalcitrant child that needed beating, which is very upsetting. But he did say that it is Nigerian culture. I don't know if I agree with that. But you know,
it's a culture.
I don't know. You know, there's so many different cultures in Nigeria. There's so many different tribes and lines.
It's even in the Bible, spare the rod, spoil the child,
yes,
but not for a married
when they happen in
the biblical one is different.
But I'm
the cultural one is when you beat a child, when you discipline the child with the right hand.
You embrace
them with the left hand.
I don't know how that fits into the Natasha.
I'm saying that's what the senator said, right?
Let's go back.
Going back to the topic, you know, because I don't know about this violence that we're seeing from the Air Force. Because when it happened in Nairobi, what the city did, what the office did is that they went and parked garbage trucks in front of the electricity distribution company, which is, again, terrible. That's terrible of them to do that. But I think it's not as bad as this. Like it's not that the Air Force even tried to intimidate them. It's not that it's the physical violence. Like going to such an extreme it's unheard of in a sane place.
Sadly, it's not the first time that the military, you know, will approach issues from that angle, sadly. You know, people talk about MK Abiola as the beacon of democracy and everything, but we also remember what he went through in the hands of officers of the Air Force at a time like that. You know, it beat him, you know, a blue-black. When we allow members of the military, who are supposed to be officers and gentlemen, to get away with violence, to get away with things like this, we're not setting a good example. And it starts from small matters like they enter into a commercial, you know, transport and they say, oh, we are staff, we're officer, they don't pay. What happened at Ikeja Electric should be condemned, you know, totally. But it also speaks to the fact that it is not just the military. Yes, there is a 4-point-something billion naira that is outstanding. But then practically all the agencies of government, including Aso Rock, until February of last year, when Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu said, this cannot go on, we must pay, even though we're Aso Rock Villa. So everybody must learn to pay if you consume, you know, power. The flip side of it is that if you check people's reaction on social media and everywhere, sadly, there doesn't seem to be any sympathy for the Ikeja Electric, except for Mr. Shueton, you know, who was treated badly. Because people are feeling the pinch of the fact that we can't get light. And so there's no matter how we sugarcoat all this band A, band B, band trunk that we're doing, people are not feeling the impact. And that will reflect in how people react to matters like this. So I think the minister and all the you know, people in charge of discos and all of that will have to do a lot more. It is not working, and it is reflecting in how people react to even humanitarian, you know, matters like this.
But it's also, you know, important when we're discussing this, like the public needs to understand that the disco is not the GenCo. You know, the discos are not generating the power; they're distributing the power that they have received. And you know, and so it's tough to understand, but you know, it's part of the issues here is that they are the front line.
We must highlight.
Yes, that we must highlight is that the disc
get the brunt of.
Yeah, they're the front lines. They get the brunt of it, but they have no power over how much they receive. Correct. They don't generate it.
Yeah. Well, A former spokesperson to former President Olusegun Obasanjo and Goodluck Jonathan, Dr. Doyin Okupe, is dead. Okupe from Ikberu Remo, Ikene local government area of Ogun State, who was said to have been sick for some time, died in the early hours of Friday in Lagos at the age of 72. Okupe was a special assistant on media and publicity to President Olusegun Obasanjo and senior special assistant on public affairs to President Goodluck Jonathan. He was also a former Director General of Peter Obi's 2023 presidential campaign organization. I mean, of course, this is just completely, completely heartbreaking. We're seeing a lot of people just put out their tributes to just speak of what a great man at this time, that he was, and it's just completely sad. But of course, our hearts go out to his family, his loved ones, his children, most importantly, at this very, very trying time.
Absolutely, our condolences to the families of Dr. Doyin Okupe.
Yes.
I mean, like what you read, this was a gentleman who worked with former President Obasanjo and Goodluck Jonathan. He was also the Director General of the Peter Obi campaign, council. I do not know, in terms of political legacy, how he will be perceived towards the twilight, of his life, given the 360 turnaround that he seems to have made, moving from the DG of a man who nearly became president and then turning around, to be making excuses and, for the current government and supporting them. But he did his best, he survived COVID in 2020 and 2021, but sadly, he couldn't get past for a long time over, cancer. May he find peace in the far country.
And may his family also find peace.